was like, ah! And I'm not a confrontational person at all.
I was wondering about that because I thought, wow, Dakota is surprisingly confrontational.
Under the soft glow of a Californian afternoon sun, the sea whispered against the sands outside a modest whitewashed beachfront villa, its salt-laden breeze curling through the lavender-scented air and brushing gently over the porch where Sam Heughan stood, rehearsing under his breath the words he had repeated 100 times in the mirror yet still could not get quite right. He wasn't there for a photo shoot or another carefully orchestrated press appearance. He was there for something infinitely more vulnerable, more intimate, and, perhaps, more perilous than any scene he had ever performed before. Dressed in a simple linen shirt, his signature Scottish charm tempered by an almost boyish nervousness, Sam held in his hands a delicate bouquet of pale pink peonies, Dakota Johnson's favorite flower, and looked out toward the horizon, his thoughts a storm of hope, fear, and reverence. Inside the villa, Dakota was in her room, her laughter occasionally drifting faintly through the open window as her mother helped her choose between two necklaces, unaware of the significance of the conversation about to unfold outside. Sam's palms were damp, his throat tight. For all the women he had faced in front of a camera, for all the intensity of his on-screen romances, nothing compared to the thought of facing Melanie Griffith. Not the actress or the Hollywood legend, but the mother of the woman he loved. Known for her fierce independence, sharp wit, and an intuition honed by decades in an industry where pretense and performance often blurred, Melanie was the kind of woman who could read a man before he uttered his first word. She was, as Dakota had once affectionately warned him, impossible to fool and harder to impress. When she finally stepped onto the porch, barefoot, her golden hair loosely cascading around her shoulders, there was no Hollywood artifice in her. She moved with the grace of a woman who had lived through storms and sunlight alike, whose beauty had evolved into something rarer than youth, honesty. Her blue eyes, crystalline and exacting, scanned Sam from head to toe, and though her lips curved faintly into a polite smile, her silence was far more telling. She sat down in the wicker chair opposite him, poured 2 glasses of mint tea from a ceramic jug that still glistened with condensation, and finally broke the silence with a voice that had lost none of its cinematic command. "So, Scotsman," she began, her tone equal parts curiosity and challenge, "how well do you think you know my daughter?" The question struck with the precision of an arrow aimed at the heart of all that was unspoken between them. Sam chuckled softly, not the rehearsed kind of laughter an actor offers an interviewer, but the nervous, genuine sound of a man stripped bare of pretense. "I'm not sure anyone can truly know Dakota completely," he began carefully, his accent lending warmth to his words. She's a universe. There's always more to discover. More light, more mystery. But what I do know," he continued, steady now, "is that I want to spend my life discovering her. Every day, in every way." For a moment, Melanie said nothing. The sea's rhythm filled the silence between them. Her gaze narrowed, not cruelly, but critically, as if weighing the sincerity behind every flicker of his expression. "Do you know," she said finally, "how many men have said that before? How many thought they were ready for the whole of her, when really they only wanted the parts they found convenient? The lovely, the sweet, the enigmatic." Her tone softened just slightly, a trace of maternal sorrow threading through the steel. "But the rest, the fragile, the restless, the rebellious parts, they couldn't stand it. They loved Dakota the idea, not Dakota the woman." Sam did not flinch, nor did he look away. His voice lowered, deep and calm, carrying a rare gravity that had nothing to do with performance. "I love all of it, Mom," he said quietly, almost reverently, using the word, without thinking, as though it had already belonged.
7 years.
What she shows the world and what she hides even from herself. "I'm not here because I think I'm perfect for her. I'm here because I want to stay, even when it isn't easy." That word, stay, hung between them, more powerful than any vow. Melanie studied him as the wind tugged at the hem of her robe, and for a brief moment, she saw something she hadn't seen in the others. Not infatuation, not conquest, but a stillness. A man who would weather her daughter's complexities rather than retreat from them. The conversation that followed stretched over 2 long, unguarded hours. They talked about family, about childhood, about what it meant to love someone whose life was always being watched. Sam spoke about the loneliness of fame, the weight of expectation, and how Dakota, with her wry humor and unexpected tenderness, had quietly dismantled his defenses. Melanie listened, interrupted him sometimes, challenged him often. There were moments of laughter, when Sam admitted he had tried and failed to cook Dakota's favorite pasta, and moments of silence, heavy and human, when they both knew they were discussing something larger than approval. Somewhere between tea refills and memories of Melanie's own past loves, something shifted. The actress became the mother. The test became a conversation. The guard between them softened. When at last the light began to dim and the sea turned molten gold, Melanie rose from her chair. For a moment, she simply stood there, looking at him as though seeing not the celebrity, not the Scot who had made millions swoon, but the man who was willing to meet her daughter's soul where it was, not where the world demanded it to be. She stepped closer, placed her hand gently on his shoulder, and in a voice quiet but resolute said, "If she chooses you, then I believe she's right." No grand cinematic declaration, no performance, just truth, simple, piercing, irrevocable. Sam felt something in his chest loosen. The air rushed back into his lungs, and before he could stop himself, he pulled her into a hug. It wasn't the polished gesture of a man making an impression. It was the raw embrace of gratitude, relief, and belonging. Melanie, slightly startled, returned it after a heartbeat, her laughter warm against his shoulder. In that moment, the Scottish actor who had traveled halfway across the world not for a role but for love, knew he had been accepted, not merely as a suitor, but as part of something sacred. When Dakota later emerged, radiant and barefoot, her mother's approval written subtly in the softness of her eyes, Sam could barely contain his emotion. He didn't need to tell her what had transpired. She knew, as daughters always do. That night, as they walked together along the dusky shore, their fingers intertwined, the future stretched before them with the same quiet majesty as the ocean beside them. Vast, unpredictable, and alive. 2 weeks later, at an independent film premiere in Los Angeles, the news broke like a quiet storm through Hollywood's chatter. Cameras flashed, questions flew, and yet amidst all the spectacle, there was something serene about the way Sam and Dakota walked the red carpet hand in hand. For once, they weren't acting. There was no role to hide behind, no fiction to sustain. Only the truth of what had begun on that lavender-scented porch. The meeting of two worlds, two families, two hearts. Those who saw them that evening noticed something different in Dakota's demeanor. A calm certainty, a radiance that seemed to glow not from the spotlight but from within. Sam, too, looked transformed. The man who had always carried himself with effortless composure now appeared almost humbled by joy. His usual charisma softened into tenderness. Behind them, Melanie watched from a discreet distance. Her lips curved into the kind of smile that only a mother could wear. A mixture of pride, nostalgia, and the faint ache of letting go. In an industry built on illusion, where love so often becomes performance, this moment, quiet, genuine, unscripted, felt like a rare act of truth. Sam's proposal had not been staged beneath fireworks or flashing cameras, but beneath the open sky, after a conversation that had stripped away everything false. Perhaps that was what made it powerful. The courage to love honestly in a world that rewards facades. As they slipped inside the theater, the murmurs of speculation rippled through the crowd. Would this be the great Hollywood union of the decade, or another fleeting romance doomed to the tabloids? But for Sam and Dakota, the noise faded as soon as the lights dimmed. Her hand rested lightly on his, her head tilted against his shoulder, and he thought of that porch again, of Melanie's approving nod, of the lavender and the laughter and the sound of the sea. The quiet witnesses to the beginning of something that, for
You just get to ask all the questions.
Okay, do you want to ask me a question? It's not been a very even interview.
Yeah. What's the
the flashbulbs flared like tiny suns as Sam Heughan and Dakota Johnson stepped onto the crimson carpet, their joined hands shimmering under the feverish light of cameras and curiosity. Yet even amid that symphony of noise and movement, There was something almost unnervingly serene about the way Sam paused, drew Dakota gently toward him, and, to everyone's astonishment, turned to face the crowd with a mixture of tenderness and conviction that seemed to still the air itself. Reporters froze mid-sentence, their lenses momentarily forgotten as the Scottish actor, his blue eyes bright with emotion, raised the microphone, his voice trembling not with uncertainty but with the weight of sincerity. "I have a special announcement," he said, glancing briefly at Dakota, whose expression was one of stunned disbelief mingled with affection. "I spoke to the most important woman in Dakota's life," he continued, the words carrying through the electric silence. "And she gave me permission to be the next one." For a moment, time appeared to hold its breath. Even the most seasoned entertainment journalists stood in suspended stillness, unsure whether they were witnessing a publicity stunt or the rarest thing in Hollywood. An unscripted confession of love. Dakota's eyes widened, her lips parting as though to speak. But Sam pressed on, his voice deepening with quiet pride. "Yes," he said. "I proposed to Dakota, and her mother agreed to let me marry her. Today, I share that with the world, not as an announcement but as gratitude. I am the happiest man alive because I love an extraordinary woman, and because her family believes in me." The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The audience erupted into cheers. Journalists forgot their professionalism. The crowd outside the barrier cried out Dakota's name, while the internet, like a restless ocean, began to surge with hashtags, tributes, and trembling disbelief. Within 30 minutes, the video had traveled across continents, its tender authenticity resonating far beyond the glamour of the event. Hashtag Sam and Dakota Forever became the anthem of a world starving for proof that love in Hollywood could still exist beyond the spotlight, that chivalry had not gone extinct beneath the weight of modern cynicism. Thousands of fans wrote messages filled with wonder and emotion. "I never believed in Hollywood love until today. Sam has proven that grown men still know how to respect women's feelings and families." His words, stripped of pretense, carried the gravity of something lost and rediscovered. A reminder that real devotion is not spectacle but sincerity. Meanwhile, Melanie Griffith, the woman at the quiet heart of this story, watched the moment unfold from her home in Los Angeles. Her daughter's joy was radiant, unmistakable. Sam's reverence for her, genuine. It wasn't just that he had sought her permission. It was that he had understood the significance of doing so. To ask a mother's blessing was to acknowledge the lineage of love that had shaped the woman he adored, to bow, in a sense, before the history that made her. Melanie, known in Hollywood for her honesty, wit, and fierce maternal instinct, had long been wary of men drawn to Dakota's light but blind to her depth. Yet she had recognized something rare in Sam: humility, steadiness, and a kind of integrity that belonged to another era. When reporters reached out for comment, she merely smiled and said, "If Dakota is happy, then so am I. He's a good man, and that's rarer than you think." Her blessing, understated yet unmistakable, became the emotional centerpiece of an unfolding modern fairy tale. As the social media frenzy grew, celebrities added their voices to the chorus of congratulations. Jamie Dornan, Dakota's co-star from 50 Shades of Grey, posted a simple, heartfelt note, "Wishing you both the best. Sam is a true gentleman. Dakota deserves this kind of love." Others followed: actors, directors, stylists, and friends who had witnessed both Dakota's quiet resilience and Sam's grounded kindness. What made the story resonate was not just the glamour of their union, but its authenticity. The merging of two worlds that seemed at once improbable and inevitable. Sam, with his Highland reserve and poetic intensity, and Dakota, with her Californian bohemian grace, had found each other not in the frenzy of celebrity, but in the stillness that exists when two souls recognize themselves. A few days later, Harper's Bazaar released an exclusive interview that only deepened the public's affection. Dakota, sitting cross-legged in her minimalist living room, her hair unbrushed and her laughter unguarded, spoke about her engagement with the kind of clarity that comes from genuine contentment. "Sam is the kind of man who never leaves you guessing," she said, smiling. "He's direct, he's real, and he's not afraid to show his feelings." that makes me feel safe and free at the same time. With him, I don't have to perform." Her words struck a chord that echoed far beyond the pages of fashion magazines. In a culture obsessed with irony and distance, here was a woman celebrating emotional transparency, and a man embodying it. When the interviewer asked how she had felt when her mother gave her blessing, Dakota's eyes softened. "My mom has a very good emotional radar," she said. "If she trusts someone, that means they're really good. She's protective, but she also believes in love, and that's something she's passed on to me." By the summer of 2025, the love story that had begun with a quiet conversation on a lavender-scented porch reached its next chapter in a place that seemed almost mythic in its symbolism. The engagement ceremony was held at an ancient castle in the Highlands of Scotland, surrounded by rolling green hills, whispering pines, and the soft, haunting cry of seabirds overhead. It was a scene that felt lifted from another time, a reminder that romance, when sincere, never goes out of fashion. There were no paparazzi, no flashing cameras, no intrusive drones. Just family, close friends, and the vast, sacred quiet of the Scottish landscape. Melanie Griffith, dressed in an elegant navy blue gown, arrived from Los Angeles with an expression that mingled pride and nostalgia. When she saw Sam waiting by the gate, she didn't hesitate. She walked straight to him and embraced him with the warmth of a mother welcoming her own son. "You've done well," she whispered, and Sam, momentarily overcome, could only nod. As evening fell and the castle's torches flickered against the stone, a small circle gathered in the courtyard, just a handful of loved ones, standing beneath the wide, forgiving sky. When it was time for Sam to speak, he turned to Dakota, took her hands, and in that moment, all the artifice of fame melted away. "I have not only found love," he began, his voice low but steady. "I have found a new family. I promise before Dakota's mother, before the heavens, and before the land of Scotland, that I will love and protect her until my last breath." His words, simple yet profound, carried across the courtyard like a prayer. Even the wind seemed to pause in reverence. Melanie dabbed her eyes discreetly. Dakota, radiant and trembling, smiled through her tears. There were no grand speeches, no extravagant gestures, only authenticity, that rarest of currencies. Later, as the night deepened and the guests danced under strings of golden light, Dakota slipped away to the edge of the courtyard, where the mountains met the stars. Sam found her there, her shawl wrapped loosely around her shoulders, her eyes reflecting the faint shimmer of the moonlit loch. "Do you realize what you've done?" she teased softly. "You turned a